The bird who followed the wind. In a quiet valley nestled between gentle green hills, there lived a small bird named Luma. She was not the brightest among her kind, nor the strongest, nor the fastest. Her feathers were a soft gray with hints of silver that shimmered only when the sunlight struck just right. To most creatures passing by, she was easy to overlook. But Luma had something no one else in the valley seemed to possess, a deep and restless curiosity. Every morning, as the sun rose slowly behind the eastern ridge, the other birds would wake, stretch their wings, and begin their usual routines. Some would gather seeds, others would sing familiar songs that echoed through the valley, and a few would argue over branches and nesting spaces. Luma, however, would sit quietly at the edge of the tallest tree and watch the sky. She noticed things others didn't. The way clouds drifted like wandering thoughts, the shifting colors of dawn, and most of all, the wind. The wind fascinated her. It whispered through the leaves, bent the grass, and carried scents from faraway places. Sometimes it was gentle, like a lullaby. Other times, it roared with a wild and untamed energy that made even the bravest birds hide. Where do you go? Luma often wondered aloud. And what do you carry with you? One day, as the valley basked in a calm golden afternoon, a sudden gust of wind swept through the trees. It was stronger than usual, tugging at branches and rustling feathers. Luma felt it wrap around her like an invitation. Without thinking too much, she spread her wings. The wind lifted her. At first, she panicked. Her wings flapped awkwardly, and her heart raced. She had flown many times before, but never like this, never surrendering control to something unseen. "Relax," she heard a voice whisper. She looked around, startled. There was no one. "Trust me," the voice came again, softer this time. Luma hesitated. Every instinct told her to fight the wind, to regain control and return to the safety of her tree. But something deeper, something quieter, told her to listen. So she did something she had never done before. She stopped flapping. The wind carried her higher. The valley below began to shrink, its familiar shapes turning into patterns of green and gold. The river became a silver ribbon. The trees merged into a soft, endless canopy. Luma felt fear, but also something else. Freedom. "Who are you?" she asked. "I am the wind," the voice replied. "I go where I am needed, and sometimes, where I am not." "Where are you taking me?" "That depends," said the wind. "Where do you want to go?" Luma had never thought about it before. She had always lived in the valley, surrounded by the same sights, the same sounds. "I want to see everything," she said finally. The wind seemed to smile. "Then hold on." And with that, it carried her beyond the valley. They traveled over vast forests where towering trees stretched endlessly toward the sky. Luma saw rivers that twisted like serpents and waterfalls that crashed with thunderous beauty. She saw mountains with peaks so high they pierced the clouds, their tops dusted with snow that glittered like diamonds. At times, the journey was smooth and peaceful. At others, it was wild and unpredictable. Storms would rise without warning, and Luma would struggle to keep her balance. "Why is it so difficult?" she cried during one particularly violent storm. "Because not all paths are gentle," the wind replied. "But every path teaches you something." "What am I supposed to learn from this?" "Strength," said the wind. "And trust." Days turned into nights, and nights into days. Luma lost track of time, but she never lost her sense of wonder. She met other birds along the way, some kind, some indifferent, and some who warned her to return home. "The world is too big," one old crow told her. "You'll lose yourself." But Luma only smiled. "Maybe," she said, "but I'd rather get lost than never explore." One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, the wind grew quiet. "Why have we stopped?" Luma asked. "Because you must decide what comes next," the wind answered. They hovered above a vast ocean. The water stretched endlessly, reflecting the fading light like a mirror of fire. "I can't cross this," Luma said, her voice trembling. "You can," said the wind. "But what if I fall? What if you fly?" Luma looked down at the endless waves, then back at the sky. She thought of her valley, her tree, and the life she had left behind. She also thought of everything she had seen, everything she had become. "I'm not the same bird anymore," she realized. "No," the wind agreed. "You're not." Luma took a deep breath. "Then let's go." The journey across the ocean was the hardest of all. The winds were unpredictable, the air was heavy with salt, and there was no place to rest. At times, Luma felt like giving up. Her wings ached, and doubt crept into her thoughts. But each time she faltered, the wind was there. Keep going, it whispered. And so she did. Finally, after what felt like forever, land appeared on the horizon. It was unlike anything Luma had ever seen, lush, vibrant, and alive with colors she didn't even know existed. Strange flowers bloomed in brilliant hues, and unfamiliar birds filled the air with songs that sounded like music from another world. As they descended, the wind softened. "This is where I leave you," it said. Luma felt a sudden emptiness. "Will I see you again?" she asked. The wind paused, as if considering the question. "I am always around," it said. "You may not see me, but you will feel me." Luma nodded. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For showing me the world." The wind laughed gently. "I didn't show you the world," it said. "You chose to see it." And with that, it was gone. Luma stood on a branch in this new land, the air warm and filled with unfamiliar scents. For the first time in a long while, she was alone. But she wasn't afraid. She looked up at the sky, the same sky that stretched over her old valley, and smiled. Then she spread her wings and flew. The question that would not leave. As Luma grew older, the other birds settled into their lives. Some became strong flyers, venturing short distances beyond the valley before returning with stories that grew less exciting each time they were told. Others focused on building nests, raising chicks, and protecting their small territories. Life, for them, had a clear shape. For Luma, it did not. Every day, she would climb to the highest branch of the tallest tree she could find. From there, she would watch the sky. "Why do you always sit there?" asked Rekka, a bright feathered bird who had known Luma since they were young. "I'm listening," Luma replied. "To what?" Luma hesitated. "I don't know yet." Rekka laughed softly. "There's nothing up there except clouds and air." But Luma wasn't convinced. Because sometimes, when the wind passed just right, she thought she heard something. Not words, not exactly, but something close. The first call. It happened on a day that began like any other. The sun rose slowly, stretching golden light across the valley. Birds began their usual routines. The air was calm, almost too calm, as if the world were holding its breath. Luma felt it before she saw it. A shift, a tension in the air. Then, without warning, the wind came. Not as a gentle breeze, but as a powerful surge that swept through the valley with sudden intensity. Leaves spiraled into the air. Branches bent and creaked. Smaller birds rushed to hide within thick foliage. But Luma didn't move. Her heart raced, but not from fear alone. There was recognition. The wind wrapped around her, stronger than anything she had ever felt before. And then, "Come." The word was clear. Luma's eyes widened. Did you say something?" she whispered. "Come," the voice repeated, carried within the wind itself. Every instinct told her to stay, to cling to the branch, to wait until the storm passed. But the feeling, the pull, was stronger than fear. Slowly, she spread her wings. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wind lifted her. Learning to let go. At first, it felt wrong. Her wings flapped instinctively, trying to regain control. But the more she fought, the more unstable she felt. "Stop fighting," the wind said. "I'll fall," Luma cried. "No," the wind replied calmly. "You'll fly." There was a difference. Luma didn't understand it yet. But she wanted to. So, trembling, she stopped resisting. She let her wings rest, not completely still, but no longer desperate. And suddenly, everything changed. The chaos became rhythm. The force became guidance. The fear became something else, something lighter. She wasn't being thrown through the sky. She was being carried. Above the valley. As they rose higher, the valley transformed beneath her. What once felt vast and endless now appeared small, contained, almost fragile. The trees blended into a sea of green. The river became a thin, shimmering thread. Luma felt a strange mixture of emotions. Awe, excitement, and something unexpected. Sadness. "That's my home," she said quietly. "It will always be part of you," the wind replied. "But I'm leaving it." "Yes. Will I come back?" The wind did not answer immediately. "Do you want to?" it asked instead. Luma looked down one last time. "I don't know." "That's all right," said the wind. "You don't have to know yet." The world beyond. Beyond the valley, the world unfolded in ways Luma had never imagined. Forests stretched endlessly, darker and denser than the ones she knew. Rivers widened into powerful currents that carved deep paths through the land. Mountains rose like giants, their peaks hidden within clouds. Each place felt alive in its own way. And each place taught her something new. In the forests, she learned patience. The wind moved slowly there, weaving carefully between towering trees. Luma had to adjust, to trust subtle movements rather than strong currents. In the mountains, she learned courage. The air was thin, the winds unpredictable. At times, she felt as though she might be thrown against the rocks. "Why bring me here?" she asked during one particularly harsh climb. "Because you must learn who you are when things are difficult," the wind answered. The birds who stayed. Not all birds welcomed her journey. In one wide meadow, Luma met a group of birds who had never left their home. "Why would you travel so far?" one of them asked. "Everything you need is right here." "It's beautiful," Luma admitted. "But I want to see more." The birds exchanged glances. "There is no more," another said firmly. "There is only here, and here is enough." Luma didn't argue, but that night, as she rested beneath unfamiliar stars, she felt the old question return. Is enough the same as everything? She wasn't sure. The storm of doubt. The most difficult moment came not from the world, but from within. It began as a quiet thought. What if this is a mistake? The thought grew louder over time, especially during long stretches of uncertainty. One night, caught in a violent storm, Luma lost sight of everything. The sky was dark, the wind erratic, the rain relentless. "I can't do this," she cried. The wind did not respond. For the first time, she felt truly alone. Her wings ached, her strength faded, and the doubt became overwhelming. Maybe I should have stayed. Maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe I'm just a small bird who tried to do something too big. The quiet answer. Then, in the middle of the storm, something unexpected happened. A moment of stillness, just a breath. In that brief silence, Luma heard something, not from the wind, but from within herself. "You chose this, not because it was easy, not because you were told to, but because something inside you said, go." The storm didn't stop, but Luma changed. She straightened her wings, not with fear, but with quiet determination. "I'm still here," she whispered. And that was enough. The endless ocean. When the storm passed, the world opened into something vast beyond imagination. The ocean. It stretched endlessly in every direction, reflecting the sky in shifting shades of blue and silver. Luma felt small again, but this time, it didn't scare her as much. "It's beautiful," she said. "It is," the wind replied. "It's also terrifying." "Yes. Do we have to cross it?" The wind answered gently. "No, you don't have to do anything." Luma thought for a long time. Then she smiled, just a little. "I want to." The long flight. Crossing the ocean was unlike anything she had experienced. There were no trees, no land, no place to rest, only sky and water. Day after day, she flew. Sometimes the wind carried her effortlessly. Other times, she had to rely on her own strength. She learned endurance. She learned rhythm. She learned how to keep going even when nothing around her changed. And in that vast emptiness, she discovered something surprising. Peace. The long flight. Crossing the ocean was unlike anything she had experienced. There were no trees, no land, no place to rest, only sky and water. Day after day, she flew. Sometimes the wind carried her effortlessly. Other times, she had to rely on her own strength. She learned endurance. She learned rhythm. She learned how to keep going even when nothing around her changed. And in that vast emptiness, she discovered something surprising. Peace. The new land. When land finally appeared, it felt unreal. Colors seemed brighter. Sounds felt richer. The air carried unfamiliar scents that sparked curiosity rather than fear. "This is where your journey changes," the wind said. "Changes?" Luma asked. "Yes. Not ends. Changes." Luma landed on a branch, her wings tired but strong. "Will you stay?" she asked. The wind was quiet for a moment. "I am never still," it said. "But I am never truly gone." Luma nodded slowly. "I think I understand now." "Do you?" "I don't need to follow you forever," she said. "I just needed to learn how to fly, with or without you." The wind seemed to smile. A different kind of flight. Days passed, then weeks. Luma explored this new land, not as someone being carried, but as someone choosing her own path. She still felt the wind. Sometimes guiding, sometimes challenging, sometimes simply present. But now, she didn't wait for it to tell her where to go. She decided, and one morning, as the sun rose in a sky that felt both new and familiar, Luma spread her wings once more. Not because she was called, but because she was ready. And she flew.
The Pigeon Who Thought He Was a Bodyguard. There once was a pigeon named Bruno, who lived in a busy city square. Unlike other pigeons, Bruno didn't spend his time chasing crumbs or flying in messy circles. No. Bruno had a job. At least he thought he did. Every morning, Bruno would pick a random human and follow them everywhere. "Don't worry," he would mutter seriously. "I am protecting you." One day, he chose a woman wearing a bright yellow hat. Bruno puffed up his chest. Perfect, high-profile target. He followed her across the street, into a park, and even outside a cafe. Whenever another bird got close, Bruno would flap aggressively. "Back off, VIP under protection." The other pigeons just stared. "Bro, she's eating a sandwich," one said. "Exactly," Bruno whispered. "That's when attacks happen." At one point, the woman dropped a piece of bread. Bruno gasped. A trap! He slowly approached the bread, circling it like a detective. Then he ate it. "I have neutralized the threat," he said proudly. The woman had no idea she had a bodyguard. But Bruno? He saved her life. Probably.
The chicken who was afraid of eggs. On a small farm lived a chicken named Daisy. Daisy had one big problem. She was terrified of eggs. Not just any eggs, all eggs. The first time she saw one, she screamed and ran in circles. "What is that?" she clucked in horror. "Ah, it's an egg," said another chicken. "It's round and smooth, and it just appeared." "Yes, Daisy, that's what we do." Daisy refused to accept it. "This is suspicious, very suspicious." From that day on, every time she laid an egg, she would panic. Oh no, it happened again. She would carefully push the egg away with a stick. "I don't know what this thing wants, but I don't trust it." The farmer was confused. Why are all the eggs in random corners? He wondered. Meanwhile, Daisy held secret meetings with the other chickens. "We need a plan," she whispered. "They're multiplying." "Daisy," one chicken sighed, "they're not multiplying. You're just laying them." Daisy froze. "I would never." Bird 3. The owl who stayed up too late. Oliver the owl had a serious problem. He loved watching the sunrise. Now,